Mom Tribe, how's it going? It is me, Sade, your friendly lactation specialist, Doula, and I am just here today to talk about how mentally taxing breastfeeding can be, okay? Because I just don't feel like it's talked about enough, for one thing. And sorry, I'm out of breath. I just climbed like a whole flight of stairs and then ignore me. I was in a wedding this past weekend. I'm not being abused. I was curling my hair and I burned myself with a curling iron, so that was fun. But anywho, aside from all that, I'm here, I'm showing up, trying to really keep this going for you all, because we need all the breastfeeding support that we can get. So with that being said, so we're gonna talk about the mental toll that breastfeeding can really take on moms, especially when you are so wanting and desiring to breastfeed and provide your baby with breast milk. And if something happens to where your milk supply is really low, or your baby's not latching on as great as you would like them to, or if you're just having any other challenges that is just really stopping you from being able to breastfeed your baby in the way that you would want to, it's mentally draining. It is emotionally draining. And a lot of people don't understand breastfeeding is so much more than just being able to, pop a boob in your baby's mouth, right? It's all about what you eat, what you drink, how you're treating yourself, what condition, your baby's health is in, how your baby is doing. Because if your baby is not, and then too, the physical changes that your baby goes through after birth can make it really hard to breastfeed. For instance, if your baby has a small mouth, maybe it's hard for them to really get on a good latch. If you didn't take a breastfeeding class, maybe you just don't know how to tell if your baby's getting enough milk. Maybe you don't know how to tell when your milk comes in. There's just so many different aspects to it, to where it's okay, sorry about that. There's so many different aspects to breastfeeding to where it just feels, you can just feel like you're thriving and failing all at the same time, right? And if you don't know what's normal or how it's supposed to be going versus, how it's actually going, that can really discourage you and make you want to stop. I hear so many stories of moms where it's the breastfeeding pain was just entirely way too painful, and it made them want to stop because they just did not feel that they were getting the support that they needed to keep going. And I think it really comes down to breastfeeding education. So it's if you're a mom who's pregnant, or if you just had a baby, or you're wanting to have a baby and you're wanting to breastfeed, or maybe you're thinking about breastfeeding in the future with your next baby, please do not skip out on the education. And it's there's so many really good free classes out there. And yes, you can Google a whole bunch of things, or you can read a whole bunch of books, but it's hard to really gauge what issues you're having when it comes to breastfeeding unless you're being assessed by a lactation specialist or consultant, or breastfeeding counselor or something. Unless you are being hands-on examined and assessed, you and your baby, by someone who knows what they're doing, it's going to be very hard to tell. Because a lot of people's first go-to when they're having issues with their milk supply is well, I need to, go drink some teas, or what can I eat to make my milk supply increase? That's everyone's first go-to. And it's not your fault, but it's that is your way of thinking, because I just feel women in general, the system failed us. We're just not set up for positive reproductive health in this country from the get-go. And breastfeeding and things like that, I feel honestly are things that we should be taught way early on, because it's a super important subject. And it's like no woman is going to want to put themselves through that if it's just going to give them a headache or if it's just going to be terrible for their mental health. And there's so many, forums about like, oh, well, breast is best and formula's horrible, or there's just so many different like stigmas out there. But it's like some women really just do not have a choice. And I totally get that. Like a lot of women just don't have a choice. Like you just were not set up to thrive, you know. And it's like when it comes to education, like there's just nothing better than working with someone who understands your particular situation, because sometimes just drinking tea or eating oatmeal isn't going to boost your milk supply. Maybe it's really something else. And until you are actually assessed by a specialist, you're not going to know what it is. So that's why I just say Google is just not enough. Like a lot of women say like, oh, well, why do I need to pay for this information when I can just go look up a video on YouTube, or I can just go like look this up on the internet? Yeah, you can go look it up on the internet, but like really think about it and ask yourself, how well has that worked out for you so far? Or how well has that really worked out for your friends so far? Just going in a Facebook group and being like, hey moms, I'm having this issue. And then you're overwhelmed and overloaded with a bunch of different responses. And like 300 of those responses, 150 are telling you do this, 150 are telling you to do that. Which one are you going to listen to, right? And which one is really right for you? You won't know that until you are assessed by a specialist. Now, granted, because I will say this, not all lactation consultants, breastfeeding counselors, lactation specialists, blah, 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 are going to know what the issue is, and they're not all good for you, right? So that's why I say pinpoint those people early on and figure out who they are, and figure and like who's local to your area, or if you're comfortable working with someone virtually or online, even better. You'll have a lot more range that way, but it's completely up to you. If you want that hands-on support, that's totally understandable. So it's like find someone who you can build a good relationship with over time, because a lot of women are, I'm like seeing a pattern that women are having babies in hospitals, the lactations are trying to see all these moms who have had their babies while also staying on their schedule and on the hospital schedule, and women are being overlooked because these lactation consultants don't really have the time to come in the room, sit with you, talk with you, figure out what's going on, figure out, like what can they do? How can they be of assistance? How can they help? They don't have the time for that. And it's super sad because, you get like this misinformation where it's like, oh yeah, like there's LCs in the hospital, and oh yeah, LC will be around to you. That might not be for another 4 or 5 hours. And granted or not, when it comes to breastfeeding, you might not have another 4 or 5 hours to wait on an LC to come to your room. So that's why it's always good to outsource and have a backup plan and have someone else that you can rely on and that you feel comfortable with, that you can talk to if you're having breastfeeding issues, so that you can get it, somewhat resolved while you're there in the hospital. And then when you're out of the hospital, you can set up an appointment, with another LC that knows your situation and has a better idea of how to help you. And if they can't help you, they have no shame in saying, you know what, this is really beyond like my scope. Let me refer you out to this doctor or this specialist for this, because this is what I'm starting to see. This is what I'm thinking that this is. And a lot of LCs in the hospital will not do that. They'll just be like, oh, well, yeah, this is fine. Or I've made the mistake, even myself, of telling a client before like, oh, that's normal. And instead of me just saying like, oh, that's normal, and the LC was like, oh yeah, I second that, that's normal, this mom had a really hard time because everybody just needed to slow down and like hear what the mom was saying, pay attention to what she was really needing, and hear her out, and like, okay, this is not this may be normal, but this is not her normal, or it's not normal for her. And I think a lot of times when it comes to the hospital system and just the system in general, really, I'm not going to blame it all on the hospitals. I feel like just women's health in general, practitioners, healthcare workers, birth workers, like we really have to do a better job of listening to the cries from our moms when they are telling us that something is wrong, something doesn't feel right, this is not it. We have to do a better job of listening, validating these moms, and really trying to help them sort through their situations and help them connect them to resources and different things like that that is actually going to help them, that is going to benefit them, instead of just brushing everything off in the baby world, the postpartum world, the pregnancy world as, oh, that's normal. Because in a lot of cases, there's a lot of things that's not normal. It's common, but it doesn't mean it's normal. And we really have to start recognizing the difference in what is normal and what is just common, because those two things are not the same. And a lot of women experience the same common issues, but that doesn't make it okay. That does not make it normal. That doesn't make it right. And so I just, as a whole, like, I just really want to make this video because, like, we just have to do better. We have to. We have to stop shaming women for their feeding choices and instead empowering them and encouraging them and helping them get to their goals of what they want to do. There's a lot of women who don't want to breastfeed, and that's perfectly fine. It's every woman's right to choose how she wants to provide and feed for her baby. And I think we have to accept that and stop trying to force our narratives or our beliefs or what worked for us on other women, which is why I'm a strong believer in education and not just turning to Google or Facebook group. And I know not every mother and family has the means to pay for certain services, but there's a lot of free services out there that are willing to be helpful and are willing to accommodate these women. So I think that's my spiel for the day. As you can hear, I've got a crying baby in the background. I got to go back and tend to. But thanks for coming to my TED Talk. And I'm just curious to know what your experiences was with lactation consultants in hospitals or lactation consultants out the hospital in general, and how your breastfeeding journey went. So please comment in below, like and subscribe, and don't forget, follow me on Instagram if you are not already. Bye.